The pompous chief engineer scoffed at the black female mechanic. "If you manage to repair this engine," he declared, his voice dripping with disdain, "I shall wed you, and I'll secure you a contract worth $300,000 annually." This insolent challenge reverberated throughout the company's sprawling warehouse, shattering the tense quiet of that Monday morning. It was a somber beginning to the week, enveloping Precision Automotive's vast industrial complex in Detroit, the very nucleus of America's automotive sector, in a shroud of gloom. The main warehouse, in particular, thudded with an oppressive tension, a stark departure from its usual vibrant hum. The stark, pale luminescence of neon lights carved sharp silhouettes across the space, highlighting the unyielding resolve of the man at its center. Richard Williams, the company's preeminent chief engineer, advanced in a sharp gray blazer, his arrogant gaze sweeping over the anxious assembly of dozens of engineers and employees. Celebrated as a titan of technical expertise with an illustrious history of triumphs, Richard also possessed a notorious reputation for his contemptuous nature. He held in low regard anyone who lacked an Ivy League education or a distinguished lineage. Today, he had resolved to humble Diana Harris, the sole woman he openly despised. Diana Harris stood composedly in a corner of the warehouse, the only black female mechanic amidst the company's elite engineering cadre. Unlike her male colleagues, she held no diplomas from prestigious institutions like MIT or Stanford. Her credentials comprised a humble garage on Detroit's South Side and two hands hardened by years of relentless, dedicated labor. Yet, whispers of her exceptional skill had permeated the city's underserved communities, where Diana was revered as a virtuoso capable of reviving machinery deemed irreparable by others. Richard approached her, a sneering smirk playing on his lips, his phone held aloft, meticulously recording every moment for the company's internal broadcast. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with amplified volume, ensuring his words reached every corner of the warehouse, "we have a truly remarkable guest today. It is my distinct honor to present Diana Harris, the individual whom her community affectionately refers to as a mechanical prodigy." A wave of laughter rippled through the assembled crowd. Diana squared her shoulders, her countenance serene, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Richard's tone shifted, becoming sharp and accusatory. "She genuinely believes she can fix our most advanced experimental engine, a feat our most accomplished engineers have already abandoned. Quite admirable, wouldn't you agree?" His sarcasm bounced off the lofty ceilings, drawing all eyes to Diana. The engine in question was a pivotal component of a top-secret initiative designed to enhance electric vehicle efficiency by an impressive 60%. However, after 3 weeks of intensive effort, Richard's star-studded team had formally conceded defeat, resulting in a company loss of $200,000. Incensed by this setback and stung by an off-hand remark suggesting Diana Harris might succeed where they had failed, Richard seized the opportunity to humiliate her. Bringing his phone closer, Richard's eyes gleamed with a challenging intensity. "So, allow me to make a formal proclamation. If Miss Harris can successfully repair this engine within 5 days, something our most brilliant engineers could not accomplish in 3 weeks, I shall immediately undertake 2 actions. Firstly," he declared, "I will offer her a consulting contract valued at $300,000 per year. And secondly," he paused, his smug grin widening, "I shall marry her." A boisterous roar of laughter erupted across the warehouse at his utterly demeaning declaration. All gazes turned to Diana, anticipating her reaction. In that precise instant, the entire space was consumed by a profound, unnerving silence. Diana held her position, meeting Richard's gaze directly, her eyes betraying no hint of apprehension. Memories, both poignant and deeply personal, resurfaced. Her late husband, tragically lost in a vehicular accident years prior. The endless nights spent cradling her ailing daughter, Jasmine. She understood the imperative to accept this challenge, not merely for her own dignity, but for the sake of her daughter's future. Richard thrust the phone even nearer, his voice laced with mockery. "Well, Miss Harris, do you dare to accept my proposition?" Diana drew a deliberate breath. Determination radiated from her quiet voice as she responded, "I accept." Those two simple words struck the warehouse like a thunderclap. A cacophony of conversations erupted, some filled with skepticism, others with sympathy, while Richard offered a cold chuckle, utterly convinced of her imminent, spectacular failure before the entire company. But Diana possessed an unwavering faith in her own capabilities. She was accustomed to confronting and overcoming insurmountable obstacles. The hushed murmurs and overt ridicule only served to fortify her resolve, igniting a potent determination within her spirit. Richard concluded his recording, turned one final time towards Diana, and sneered, "Best of luck, Diana. I eagerly await witnessing your miracle." He then departed, leaving her standing amidst dozens of scrutinizing stares. However, Diana no longer gave credence to their doubts or their derision. In that defining moment, she made a silent vow. She would demonstrate that true marvels are not forged by academic credentials or social standing, but by courageous hearts and hands willing to conquer the seemingly impossible. Richard turned and walked away, but the self-satisfied smirk on his face remained etched in Diana's consciousness. Richard's phone screen remained illuminated, broadcasting the brief clip of Diana accepting his audacious challenge. It was not long before that video appeared on every internal Precision Automotive feed, spreading through the company with astonishing rapidity. Less than an hour later, every smartphone and monitor across all departments displayed Diana Harris's determined, slightly apprehensive countenance as she agreed to the chief engineer's audacious dare. Comments flooded in like an overwhelming deluge. Initially, they were mere whispers of curiosity, rapidly escalating into venomous mockery and scorn. Upstairs, ensconced in his plush leather chair, Richard reclined in comfort, observing the ensuing reactions. He reveled in each derisive remark, interpreting them as tangible proof of his unassailable authority and esteemed position within Precision. Richard harbored no personal animosity towards Diana. In his estimation, she was merely a symbol of everything he reviled. Individuals who presumed success was attainable through inherent talent and diligent effort, rather than through coveted university qualifications. Born into an affluent family with a three-generation legacy of accomplished engineers, Richard had cultivated an unshakable conviction that academic accolades, social prestige, and professional respect were the inherent birthright of conventionally trained professionals. Within his rigidly defined worldview, individuals like Diana Harris had no rightful place in high-technology engineering arenas, and their mere presence diluted the principles he held dear. Scrolling through the comments, Richard chuckled at the cruelly barbed remarks. "Does she imagine this is a sewing machine?" he mused. "I hope Diana can even decipher an engineering schematic." He smiled coldly, absolutely certain that within a mere few days, Diana's inevitable failure would be laid bare for the entire company to witness, thereby solidifying their awe and reverence for his status, ensuring they would never again dare to question the acumen of their engineering leader. Meanwhile, in the workshop below, Diana stood in silent contemplation amidst the incessant murmurings of her colleagues. She felt no need to consult her phone. She knew the video was ubiquitous. The expressions directed her way had transformed from simple curiosity to blatant contempt. Several individuals passing by even feigned stifled laughter, treating her as if she were a mere punchline. Most distressing of all, Diana understood that the insults would not be confined to her. Hours after the video had been disseminated, her 16-year-old daughter, Jasmine, a sensitive high school junior, began receiving malicious messages from her classmates. Jasmine initially remained silent, but upon her arrival home, her usually beautiful face was swollen and streaked with tears. As Diana opened the door, she discovered Jasmine sitting rigidly on the sofa, her gaze fixed intently on her phone. "Mom," Jasmine choked out, her voice quivering with suppressed emotion. Diana hurried to her daughter's side, pulling her into a comforting embrace, her heart constricting as she glimpsed the cascade of mocking comments and the link to Richard's video displayed on the screen. "I'm sorry, Mom, but they say you'll never succeed. They claim you're just a common mechanic playing pretend." Jasmine sobbed, her small hands tightly gripping her mother's shirt. Diana was momentarily overwhelmed by a surge of pain and indignation. Ever since her husband's untimely demise, she had steadfastly clung to her inner strength, resolutely refusing to betray any sign of vulnerability. However, confronted with her daughter's tears, she felt the cumulative weight of all her sacrifices teetering on the precipice of being undone by a single act of cruel taunting. Yet, Diana recognized the critical necessity of preventing emotion from superseding reason. She gently brushed Jasmine's hair from her face and whispered, "Jasmine, I know this is incredibly difficult, but you must have faith in me. Those who judge us only perceive the superficial. They are unaware of our past struggles, and they fail to recognize the profound strength we possess within." Gazing into her daughter's tear-filled eyes, Diana spoke with an unshakable conviction. "I promise you, I will prove them all wrong. No one possesses the right to look down upon us. Do you believe me?" Jasmine nodded, her eyes still red-rimmed. Diana held her daughter tightly, silently dedicating herself to doing whatever was necessary to safeguard Jasmine, ensuring her child would never again endure such a humiliating experience. Later, after Jasmine had finally succumbed to a deep, exhausted slumber, Diana quietly slipped from her room and made her way to the small balcony, overlooking the distant, faint glow of the city lights. In the profound stillness of the night, she contemplated the daunting possibility of achieving the truly impossible. Then, the image of Jasmine's trusting face flashed before her eyes. She knew with absolute certainty that she had no alternative. She would fight, not solely for herself, but for Jasmine, and for every individual who had ever been subjected to condescension by those convinced of their own inherent superiority. In the enveloping darkness, Diana's calloused hands clenched into resolute fists. Whispering to herself, her voice quiet yet fiercely determined, she vowed, "Very well, Richard. If you seek conflict, I am prepared to wage it until the very end." In the tranquil stillness of the night, on her intimate balcony, Diana's gaze lingered on the distant constellations of downtown Detroit's lights. Yet her thoughts drifted back to haunting recollections. The instant she had held Jasmine and witnessed her daughter's profound anguish stemming from the cruel taunts of classmates felt like an invisible blade, reopening a wound Diana had buried deeply for years. 7 years prior, on a bitterly cold and rain-drenched afternoon, her husband, Marcus Harris, had departed their home with the intention of purchasing a birthday cake for their then 9-year-old daughter. Diana vividly recalled the final smile Marcus bestowed as he bid farewell to her and Jasmine, promising a swift return with Jasmine's cherished chocolate confection. However, he never returned. A single, stark phone call from the hospital irrevocably altered the trajectory of Diana's life. A slick road had tragically claimed Marcus instantaneously in a vehicular collision. Diana remembered the world imploding around her, each subsequent breath a desperate struggle against an overwhelming tide of unbearable sorrow. She had not only lost her husband, but also her closest confidant, the one person who consistently encouraged her to pursue her profound passion for mechanics, disregarding society's persistent assertion that it was an unsuitable profession for women. Marcus had been the sole individual who genuinely understood and wholeheartedly supported her aspirations. He firmly believed that Diana's talent was not defined by academic credentials or gender, but by her unyielding passion and her remarkably skilled hands. Upon Marcus's passing, Diana not only mourned the loss of her life partner, but also grappled with the immense responsibility that now devolved upon her, raising Jasmine as a single parent in a world rife with injustice and prejudice. From that momentous day forward, each day presented itself as an ongoing battle for Diana. a battle for survival and, more importantly, a battle to shield Jasmine from any further harm. She immersed herself in her work, diligently repairing every conceivable machine and engine she encountered, laboring around the clock to ensure Jasmine could attend school, receive adequate nourishment, remain warm, and maintain a semblance of stability in her life. Diana meticulously concealed her profound grief, resolute in her determination never to allow Jasmine a glimpse of her mother's inherent vulnerability. However, now, as her daughter endured the very injustices Diana had striven so arduously to protect her from, the old pain resurfaced with an intensified ferocity. Diana recognized the depth of Jasmine's hurt and understood the imperative to be stronger than ever to facilitate her daughter's healing process. As the first faint rays of dawn began to emerge, Diana quietly entered Jasmine's room and settled herself beside her daughter's bed. Jasmine still slept soundly, her eyelashes fluttering in what appeared to be a restless, anxious dream. Diana gently brushed her daughter's hair back from her forehead, her heart overflowing with love, yet weighed down by a heavy burden of concern for their uncertain future. "I will not permit anyone to inflict harm upon you again," she whispered, her voice resonating with the firmness of a solemn pledge to herself and to her departed husband. Jasmine stirred, her eyes fluttering open, regarding her mother with a look of surprised inquiry. "Mom, are you all right?" she asked softly, her voice still hoarse and trembling from her tears. Diana managed to force a gentle smile, despite the internal surge of pain and anger that tightened her chest. "I am always all right, my darling. Do you recall what Daddy used to tell me?" she asked, her voice gentle. "He said, 'We are stronger than people realize, and no one can define us solely through their words.'" Jasmine sat up, rubbing her sleepy eyes, then rested her head on Diana's shoulder. After a prolonged silence, she spoke in a small yet earnest tone. "I miss Daddy, Mom. I wish he were here right now." Diana's heart ached with a profound sadness, but she maintained a calm and resolute demeanor. "Daddy is always with us, Jasmine," she assured her daughter, "and he would be immensely proud of how bravely we face our challenges. Trust me, we will overcome this together." Jasmine nodded subtly, a faint glimmer of hope and trust illuminating her tear-stained eyes. Diana enveloped her daughter in a tight embrace, her determination swelling with an unprecedented intensity. She understood that this was no longer merely a competition with Richard Williams. This had become a profound struggle for her honor, for Jasmine's future, and for every woman like her who waged a silent, daily battle against a world saturated with prejudice. That day, after ensuring Jasmine arrived at school and encouraging her to confront the taunting with unwavering resolve, Diana returned to her modest workshop. Standing amidst her well-worn tools, she intently examined the prototype engine that Richard and his team had ultimately abandoned. The undertaking before her would be far from simple. It might even prove impossible given her limited financial resources. However, Diana recognized this as her singular opportunity to reshape the perceptions of the world regarding her capabilities. A detailed strategy began to materialize within her mind. She understood that her task extended beyond simply repairing the engine. She needed to meticulously uncover every subtle defect, identify the precise reason why Richard's engineers had faltered. There had to be a fundamental cause that they had either overlooked or deliberately disregarded. Drawing upon her extensive years of practical, hands-on experience, she felt confident she would detect something that those privileged Ivy League graduates had failed to even contemplate. Diana moved towards her workbench and commenced jotting down ideas and potential methodologies in her small notebook. Her eyes shone with a fierce, unwavering light, no longer dimmed by the shadows of past grief. Marcus had imparted to her the crucial lesson that failure was not the true adversary. The ultimate defeat lay in surrendering before exerting one's utmost effort. And on this occasion, Diana vowed, she would not yield. She would conquer this challenge, not solely for herself or for Jasmine, but to definitively demonstrate to the world that human potential is never constrained by a painful past or societal biases, but rather by the indomitable will and courage to surmount adversity. The late afternoon sun, in its gentle descent, streamed through the modest workshop window, casting a warm, golden luminescence across the sturdy wooden workbench. Diana sat there, enveloped by the intricate components of the experimental engine, her gaze more focused and contemplative than ever before. After an extensive day spent meticulously examining each individual part, a peculiar intuition began to surface within her, a gut feeling she could not afford to dismiss. She carefully picked up one of the components, a sensor engineered for precise performance measurement, and scrutinized it. Its minuscule connector exhibited unusual signs of wear, so subtle as to be almost imperceptible unless examined with extreme scrutiny. Diana frowned as a tremor of apprehension began to course through her. This was not indicative of natural degradation. It suggested deliberate tampering, a manipulation of the part designed to trigger a failure that would prove exceedingly difficult to detect. Her chest tightened as she proceeded to examine a second critical element, the electronic control chip. A nearly invisible hairline scratch marred its surface, appearing accidental, yet positioned with uncanny precision where it could disrupt the entire system's synchronization. Diana paused, her breath catching in her throat, a palpable tension coiling through her body. She reached for the final component, the pressure-regulating valve. As anticipated, the valve too had been compromised in a similarly clandestine manner. A minuscule aperture drilled in an almost hidden location, just large enough to destabilize the engine's internal pressure during operation. The three most crucial components had all been expertly sabotaged. This was no ordinary defect or random malfunction. It was clear that someone within Precision Automotive harbored the intent to sabotage this project and possessed the requisite skill to execute it without arousing the suspicion of even the most accomplished engineers. A chill coursed down Diana's spine. She sank back into her chair, her work-worn hands trembling with a mixture of outrage and profound disbelief. Who could be responsible for such a calculated act? Who possessed both the motive and the capability to undermine the company's most vital engine initiative from within its very core? At that precise moment, Diana's thoughts turned to an individual she trusted implicitly to illuminate the situation. Samuel Brooks, a seasoned engineer who had recently retired from Precision. Samuel had served as a senior consultant on numerous significant projects, consistently demonstrating a profound respect for genuine talent and never underestimating individuals based on their background or gender. She promptly dialed his number, and to her immense relief, he readily agreed to meet. Late that afternoon, Samuel Brooks appeared at the threshold of her modest workshop. His face bore the distinguished lines of age, yet his eyes still sparkled with sharp intellect. He stepped inside and offered a warm smile upon seeing Diana. "I've heard about the considerable challenge you're currently facing," Samuel stated in his deep, empathetic tone. "I am acquainted with Richard. While brilliant, he is also exceedingly arrogant. He harbors the conviction that this industry is exclusively for individuals precisely like himself. However, Diana, you are not merely a casualty of prejudice. You possess genuine talent, and I understand you've unearthed something significant, haven't you?" Diana nodded and swiftly guided him through her groundbreaking discoveries, the three deliberately sabotaged components. Samuel listened with unwavering attention, his expression growing increasingly grave, his eyes flashing with a palpable anger. Upon hearing the full account, Samuel remained silent for a moment. Then his tone shifted, adopting a cold, hard edge. "Your powers of observation are truly remarkable, Diana. I have encountered this very type of sabotage previously. Years ago, during my tenure at Precision, I harbored suspicions of an internal operative systematically undermining projects for personal financial gain. Projects spearheaded by female or minority engineers frequently experienced failures of a strangely consistent nature, and Richard invariably stood to profit from these outcomes." Samuel paused, meeting Diana's gaze with a solemn intensity. I retired before I could amass sufficient corroborating evidence, but the matter continued to haunt me. It now appears that Richard has singled you out as his next target. A shiver traced its way down Diana's spine as she grasped the magnitude of the conspiracy, realizing it extended far beyond her initial comprehension. This was not merely a personal trial. It was a battle against an entrenched internal force intent on crushing anyone who deviated from their narrow mold. Samuel gently placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his gaze conveying firm encouragement. "Diana, I understand the immense burden this places upon you, but you must persevere, not only for your own sake, but for the sake of everyone else. Richard and individuals of his ilk have consistently attempted to undermine and destroy talent. Keep this information confidential for the time being. Proceed with repairing the engine as you pledged, but concurrently, meticulously gather evidence. I will provide my assistance. Together, we shall expose the perpetrator of this calculated sabotage." After Samuel's departure, Diana stood alone in the fading hues of the sunset. She acutely felt the weight of the responsibility now resting upon her. This was no longer merely a wager with Richard Williams. It had evolved into a crucial fight for justice, for Jasmine, for Marcus, and for countless others who had suffered similar injustices. With a fierce and unwavering resolve, Diana commenced outlining her strategic plan. She would undertake the clandestine reconstruction of the engine, meticulously documenting every facet of the sabotage. Subsequently, she would publicly expose Richard before the entire company. She understood that from this very moment forward, every action she took held the potential for either a triumphant victory or a devastating setback. But Diana was prepared. She was not facing this challenge in solitude. Standing behind her were Jasmine, Samuel, and the enduring spirit of Marcus, urging her onward with the steadfast promise that justice ultimately prevails for those courageous enough to confront wrongdoing. While Diana meticulously formulated her strategic plan within the confines of her small workshop across town in Detroit, Richard Williams remained immersed in the gratifying glow of his initial triumph. He experienced a profound surge of satisfaction as the mocking video depicting Diana circulated rapidly throughout the company, positioning him at the epicenter of attention. His burgeoning pride, however, fostered a dangerous complacency, leading him to abandon the caution that had long served him effectively. On Wednesday afternoon, Richard readily accepted an invitation to appear on the highly popular radio program, Detroit Today, a widely respected talk show with a substantial following among local business professionals. His intention was to leverage this platform to unequivocally showcase his supreme confidence and to publicly and decisively put Diana in her place. The instant the crimson indicator illuminated, signaling broadcast readiness, the program's moderator, a middle-aged woman recognized for her comforting and captivating vocal delivery, initiated the segment with an inquiry. "Welcome back to Detroit Today. We are genuinely pleased to have Richard Williams, the lead engineer at Precision Automotive, with us this afternoon. Richard, I understand you've extended a rather intriguing proposition to a local mechanic." Richard responded with a self-assured, knowing smile, his voice projecting with unmistakable confidence. "Thank you. Indeed. It recently came to pass that we encountered a rather peculiar situation at our firm. A mechanic by the name of Diana Harris, who possesses no formal engineering qualifications, asserted her ability to repair one of our experimental engines, a task that has stumped even our most experienced engineers. I even made a somewhat jocular wager. Should she succeed, I pledged to marry her forthwith and secure her a lucrative annual contract valued at $300,000. He then paused, releasing a derisive chuckle that echoed across the airwaves, clearly conveying his disdain for Diana. "You know," he continued, "sometimes it's necessary to assist individuals in recognizing their actual limitations. I believe Diana here is suffering from a rather significant affliction of misjudgment regarding her own capabilities." Richard's haughty demeanor and dismissive pronouncements resonated far more widely than he could have possibly comprehended. Unbeknownst to him, Dr. Angela Morrison, a distinguished authority in the field of industrial sabotage investigations, was en route home from the University of Michigan. Angela happened to tune into the radio and overheard every syllable Richard uttered. Her brow furrowed with concern as she listened, her expression becoming increasingly grave with each passing sentence. Drawing upon her extensive professional background, she immediately sensed that something was profoundly amiss. Richard's unwavering certainty in Diana's inevitable failure, imbued with an air of arrogance, sparked a deep-seated suspicion within her. Having previously provided counsel to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and numerous major corporations on intricate internal sabotage cases, Angela was well aware that such incidents are frequently masked as spontaneous technical malfunctions, and the typical victims are those perceived as lacking requisite expertise. Her instincts compelled her to act without delay. Following a day dedicated to accumulating information and identifying essential contacts, Angela Morrison arrived at Diana's modest workshop the subsequent afternoon. Diana was taken by surprise to encounter the elderly woman, distinguished by her early silver hair and thick black-rimmed spectacles. Nevertheless, her eyes conveyed a sharp acuity, a blend of intelligence and wariness. "Please forgive my unannounced visit," Angela stated with gentle yet firm resolve. "I am Dr. Angela Morrison, an investigator specializing in industrial sabotage. I heard Mr. Richard Williams' remarks about you on the radio, and I detected a significant underlying issue." Diana, though initially startled, immediately grasped the gravity of the circumstances. She invited Angela inside and meticulously detailed every aspect of her discovery, specifically identifying the 3 critical components that had been artfully tampered with. She recounted her recent meeting with Samuel Brooks and articulated her suspicions of a deeply rooted conspiracy within Precision Automotive aimed at discrediting her and others of similar background. Angela listened with rapt attention, her concern escalating with every revelation. After a moment of contemplation, she met Diana's gaze directly and declared, "I am convinced you are confronting a serious instance of internal sabotage. The evidence you've unearthed aligns precisely with methodologies I've encountered previously. Richard's engineering cadre is far too adept to overlook such precise interference. This is no mere accident. It is the product of a meticulously coordinated group of skilled individuals from within the organization." She paused again, her stare unwavering. "I wish to offer my assistance. Continue your work on the engine as if nothing untoward has occurred, and I will aid you in amassing further corroborating evidence. Together, we shall expose the perpetrators of this sabotage once and for all." A profound sense of relief washed over Diana, knowing she was no longer isolated in this challenging endeavor. She clasped Angela's hand, her eyes alight with renewed determination. "Thank you so very much, Dr. Morrison. Together, we shall uncover the truth." After Angela's departure, Diana sat in quiet contemplation within the workshop. She recognized that Richard's arrogance and overweening confidence constituted his most significant vulnerabilities. This critical flaw had inadvertently guided Angela to her doorstep, affording Diana a clearer perspective on the formidable battle that lay ahead. Now, Diana was not only resolved to demonstrate her own competence, but also to unmask the clandestine conspiracy at Precision, thereby restoring integrity and honor, not solely for herself, but for every individual who had endured the injustice and prejudice she had experienced. The moment Dr. Angela Morrison departed the workshop, Diana stood by the window for an extended period, her mind actively processing all that had transpired during their conversation. She understood that every subsequent action she took would require the utmost prudence. It was at that precise juncture that her mobile device, resting on the workbench, began to vibrate insistently with incoming communications from Jasmine, her daughter's voice imbued with a palpable sense of urgency. "Mom, they're doing something awful on social media. You absolutely must see this right now." Diana's heart constricted with alarm as she grabbed her phone. Her screen immediately populated with notifications originating from Precision Automotive's internal social media channels. Richard Williams had escalated his actions significantly. He had established a new chat group, sarcastically christened Tracking the Miracle of the Lady Mechanic, with numerous employees already included. Venomous commentary and derisive imagery flooded her display, causing Diana's throat to tighten with mounting anger. Within the group chat, Richard routinely disseminated malicious barbs, leveraging his authority and influence to foment derision. One of his most recent taunts read, "Let's observe how this miracle unfolds at Diana's humble little workshop. Anyone care to wager on when she'll finally raise the white flag?" Those who aligned themselves with Richard readily joined in the condemnation. Jake Silver, Richard's devoted subordinate, interjected with a sneer. "I believe the sole miracle we'll witness is her figuring out how to power on a computer without a guided tutorial." Sandra from Human Resources could not resist contributing. "Perhaps she's occupied with learning blueprint interpretation via YouTube, but I'd wager it will take her the remainder of her lifetime." Each cruel missive inflicted a stinging blow to Diana's pride. However, she understood that any outward reaction would play directly into Richard's hands. She drew a deep breath, compelling herself to maintain composure, reminding herself that her most potent reprisal would be strategic reticence, followed by decisive action. Jasmine entered the workshop, her eyes visibly red, clutching her laptop. Her voice, though soft, was resolute. "Mom, we cannot simply stand by and permit this. We must meticulously document everything they are disseminating before they have the opportunity to erase the evidence." Meeting her daughter's determined gaze, Diana recognized how profoundly Jasmine had matured, perhaps more rapidly than she had ever anticipated. She offered a small, grateful smile, acknowledging the fortitude her daughter had evidently inherited from her father. "You are absolutely right, Jasmine," Diana affirmed, her tone steady and clear. "We shall discreetly gather every shred of proof, every comment, every video. When the opportune moment arrives, this will serve as our most formidable weapon." With Jasmine's assistance, Diana meticulously reviewed each message, image, and video clip posted by Richard's clique. Jasmine diligently saved all the material into a secure, concealed directory, meticulously organizing the insults and mockery into an irrefutable repository. Every disparaging remark, every humiliating video, now transformed into potent evidence, awaiting the precise moment to expose the bigotry and malevolence of Richard and his collaborators. Concurrently, within the opulent confines of his office on Precision's uppermost level, Richard reclined in his leather executive chair, smugly observing the group's engagement. He harbored an absolute conviction that Diana would succumb to the public humiliation imminently. "Jake," he addressed his assistant with a self-congratulatory grin, "I'll wager she'll be pleading to resign within 3 days. An individual like Diana simply cannot withstand this caliber of pressure." Jake responded with an agreement laced with flattery. "You are a true genius, Richard. No one can withstand your masterful psychological maneuvers." However, Richard had profoundly misjudged Diana's resilience. Rather than faltering, his campaign of degradation only served to intensify her resolve. She recognized that she had no alternative but to retaliate. This was no longer solely a matter of personal dignity. It had evolved into a confrontation with a deeply entrenched system of prejudice prevalent at Precision Automotive. Night after night, Diana and Jasmine dedicated extensive hours to scrutinizing, annotating, and cataloging every fragment of evidence, meticulously preparing for their decisive counteroffensive. Diana understood that Richard's profound arrogance was, in fact, his most significant vulnerability, and this represented the opening she intended to exploit for victory. One evening, after they had compiled a comprehensive dossier, Diana sat in silence at her desk, a formidable determination swelling within her chest. Jasmine approached, placing a comforting hand on her mother's shoulder, and inquired softly, "Mom, do you truly believe we can prevail in this struggle?" Diana met her daughter's earnest gaze with absolute certainty. "I don't merely believe it, Jasmine. I know it. They made a colossal error in underestimating us, and I will ensure they are held accountable for every injustice they have perpetrated." Her voice resonated with unshakable conviction. For the first time in days filled with palpable tension, Jasmine allowed herself a smile of profound relief. Mother and daughter exchanged a look of unspoken understanding. A formidable challenge lay ahead, but it presented their opportunity to reclaim the justice and dignity they so rightfully deserved. Outside the workshop's window, night had fully descended. Yet, within the hearts of Diana and Jasmine, the beacon of justice burned more brightly than ever, illuminating the path they were unequivocally determined to follow to its conclusion. The ever-expanding collection of evidence that Diana and Jasmine had been discreetly accumulating provided Diana with a measure of confidence. Nevertheless, she recognized that mere mocking videos and chat transcripts would be insufficient to overcome Richard and the conspiracy he had meticulously orchestrated. It was at that precise moment that her telephone rang, signaling an unexpected call from Dr. Angela Morrison. Angela's voice, serious and urgent, resonated clearly through the receiver. "Diana, I have analyzed your situation in greater detail. We must convene immediately." A few hours later, Angela arrived at Diana's compact workshop. In the seasoned expert's eyes, Diana perceived both an unyielding determination and a penetrating, focused intensity. Angela carried a satchel laden with technical apparatus and meticulously prepared research documentation. Without any preamble, she moved directly to the core of the matter. "I have dedicated several days to examining the components you provided," Angela stated, carefully arranging detailed technical reports across Diana's workbench. Her expression was somber, each word carrying considerable weight. "The 3 parts you discovered were indeed subjected to tampering in an exceedingly sophisticated manner, clearly designed to disrupt the entire engine system. This is not an instance of random mechanical failure. It represents deliberate industrial sabotage executed by an individual possessing expert knowledge of Precision Automotive's proprietary technology." Diana felt as though each of Angela's pronouncements illuminated the very suspicions she had harbored all along. However, what followed next impacted her more profoundly than anything prior. Angela lowered her voice further and fixed Diana with an intense, penetrating stare. "This is not the inaugural instance of sabotage at Precision. I have conducted covert research into the company's history of unsuccessful projects, and the findings were profoundly alarming." Angela slid a substantial dossier across to Diana. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of sorrow and indignation. "Over the past 5 years, no fewer than 8 significant projects at Precision have encountered failure attributed to technical issues. Curiously, every single one of those projects was spearheaded by either female engineers or engineers of color. None of the projects managed by white male engineers ever experienced a setback. Furthermore, following each failure, Richard and his team directly reaped substantial benefits: promotions, salary increases, and enhanced control over subsequent critical endeavors. A shiver coursed through Diana's body as a surge of indignant fury ignited within her. She surveyed the documents laid out before her. Each page presented incontrovertible proof of the reprehensible scheme that Richard and his associates had relentlessly executed for years. "Do you comprehend the implications of this, Diana?" Angela inquired softly, but with unwavering firmness. "Richard is not merely endeavoring to humiliate you. He is actively preserving a clandestine system of institutionalized discrimination within Precision. You are the most recent target, but you will not be the last, unless we put a definitive end to this now." Diana remained silent for a considerable duration, her mind reeling from these appalling revelations. She had initially believed her struggle was confined to matters of personal honor and ensuring Jasmine's safety. Now, she understood that her responsibility extended far beyond those personal concerns. This had escalated into a battle against systemic injustice, a fight for equity not only for herself but for the numerous colleagues Richard had systematically undermined through his authoritarian control. Diana drew a deep, fortifying breath, and finally spoke, her voice imbued with a newfound steadiness. "Angela, I am fully aware that this undertaking will be exceedingly difficult, but I will not waver. We must commit every ounce of our effort to bring this truth to light and reinstate justice for all of Richard's victims." Angela offered a small, encouraging smile, her eyes radiating unwavering conviction. "I have been anticipating the arrival of someone as courageous as you, Diana, to confront this situation. This will undoubtedly be a formidable struggle, but I am confident we will emerge victorious if we maintain our unity and steadfastness." As Angela prepared to depart, she paused at the doorway, turning back to address Diana with a powerful, final reminder. "Never forget, Diana," she cautioned. "Richard's arrogance and his disdain for others are his most significant liabilities. He is convinced you are incapable of performing a miracle. However, you will demonstrate that genuine miracles arise from the potent forces of truth and unwavering courage." After Angela had departed, Diana remained standing silently within the workshop, absorbing the profound weight of every word she had heard. She cast her gaze upward towards the small photograph of Marcus and Jasmine adorning the wall, envisioning her late husband's encouraging gaze offering support in this monumental struggle. Diana understood that from this very moment forward, she was championing a cause that extended far beyond herself or her immediate family. This was a fight for every individual who had ever faced oppression, been denied their rightful opportunities, and subsequently marginalized by those in positions of power. She moved purposefully towards her workbench, gathering the documents and evidence Angela had provided. A fierce resolve illuminated her eyes. All traces of fear and hesitation had vanished. Diana Harris realized that she was no longer merely a woman confronting prejudice and derision. She now held the potential to expose an unjust system and deliver justice to those who had been long overlooked and forgotten. From this point onward, Diana understood that this conflict was not solely about vanquishing Richard. It represented her opportunity to fundamentally alter the established order of things for all time. The days that followed that pivotal meeting with Angela unfolded in an atmosphere of suffocating quietude. Diana understood that even the slightest misstep could result in the catastrophic collapse of their entire, meticulously crafted plan. Beneath her outwardly composed demeanor, she dedicated countless hours to navigating the precarious boundary between brilliance and inherent risk. These were long, sleepless nights during which she and Angela meticulously reviewed every piece of classified documentation, painstakingly gathering and compiling the most minute fragments of evidence pertaining to the sabotage at Precision Automotive. While Diana and Angela labored in clandestine secrecy, Richard continued his campaign of mockery with audacious arrogance. Each morning, he disseminated new taunts within the internal chat group, adamantly asserting the inevitability of Diana's downfall. He even conceived and disseminated a series of offensive memes that rapidly circulated throughout the company, eliciting snickers and derision from his colleagues. Richard was utterly convinced that Diana would succumb to the immense psychological pressure he had deliberately manufactured. In his estimation, victory was already assured. It was merely a matter of time. However, his profound hubris completely blinded him to the impending storm gathering ominously behind his back. Diana and Angela convened regularly at a discreet cafe located on the city's periphery, meticulously avoiding any potential suspicion. Their chosen table was invariably laden with folders, photographic evidence, and numerous pages meticulously detailing past acts of sabotage. With invaluable support from Samuel Brooks, who had served as Precision's chief engineer prior to Richard's ascension, they began to meticulously connect the critical threads of the conspiracy. Samuel, possessing an intimate understanding of Precision's intricate internal operations, provided them with a substantial dossier of internal reports that had been deliberately concealed. These documents meticulously chronicled suspicious failures across 8 major projects spanning the preceding 5 years, all of which had been under the leadership of either female or minority engineers. Notably, not a single project overseen by white male engineers had ever encountered failure. Furthermore, in the aftermath of each failure, Richard and his select inner circle had experienced direct and significant financial gains, promotions, salary increments, and positions of leadership on the company's most vital upcoming projects. Samuel regarded Diana with profound solemnity, his voice modulated to a low, measured tone. All of these failed projects adhere to a remarkably consistent pattern. A critical component is intentionally compromised with surgical precision, and the resulting technical anomalies are artfully staged to evade immediate detection. And the sole individual consistently present on these projects in the period preceding their eventual collapse is Richard, accompanied by his trusted engineering team. Angela picked up the narrative, her eyes sharp and unwavering. That aligns perfectly with my technical analysis. These are not random malfunctions. They are deliberate actions perpetrated by individuals intimately familiar with this technology. Diana held the classified dossier in her hands, her fingers trembling with a mixture of emotion and intense tension. It felt as though she were grasping not only her own future, but the future of all those who had been unjustly harmed. She looked at Samuel and Angela, her voice resonating with a resolve more profound than ever. With this evidence, we will not only bring Richard down, but also expose the corrupt system that has been entrenched for years. However, we must exercise extreme caution. The slightest error could jeopardize the entire operation. In the subsequent days, Diana and Angela toiled tirelessly and discreetly. They meticulously analyzed every piece of data, photographed and scanned numerous documents, and generated multiple duplicate copies to ensure the absolute preservation of the evidence against any attempt at destruction. Jasmine also actively contributed by digitally cataloging all the documents, videos, and Richard's disparaging messages. Despite her tender age, Jasmine's remarkable maturity and profound sense of responsibility filled Diana with immense pride. Meanwhile, Richard continued to revel in his privileged position at Precision, hosting small celebratory gatherings with his closest engineers to toast Diana's inevitable defeat. He remained blissfully unaware that every mocking remark and every self-satisfied gesture was being meticulously recorded and would soon be employed as the most potent ammunition in the meticulously planned strategy to unmask him. One late evening, within the confines of the cramped room overflowing with documents and meticulously organized evidence, Diana slumped back in her chair, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Angela, seated opposite her, took a sip of coffee before speaking gently. "Diana, I understand this is an extraordinarily tense phase, but you must maintain your composure. Richard is making a grave error by being so excessively confident. When we present our comprehensive evidence to the company leadership and subsequently to the media, he will be utterly undone." Diana nodded subtly, her eyes reflecting an unbreakable resolve. "I will not permit my emotions to compromise the plan. I simply cannot stop thinking that Marcus would be so incredibly proud to witness us fighting for what is right." Angela offered her a warm, understanding glance. "He absolutely would be proud of you, Diana. And I am thoroughly convinced that once this ordeal is concluded, not only Jasmine but countless others will be eternally grateful for your extraordinary courage." Beyond the window, the darkness had completely enveloped Detroit. Yet, within Diana's heart, a blazing flame of justice, truth, and unwavering determination burned with ever-increasing intensity. She knew that within mere days, a cataclysmic storm, which Richard had never remotely anticipated, would sweep away his arrogance and dismantle his power, restoring justice to individuals like herself and Jasmine, who had endured prejudice and injustice in silent suffering for far too extended a period. The nocturnal expanse above Detroit was devoid of any visible stars. Darkness pressed down like an immense velvet drape, still and profoundly mysterious. Within the familiar confines of her workshop, Diana toiled relentlessly at her workbench, beads of perspiration glistening on her brow beneath the soft illumination of the yellow light. In merely a few hours, she was slated to ascend the stage before the entire company assembly. a moment destined to irrevocably alter the course of both her and Jasmine's lives. Upon the worn wooden surface of the table rested the experimental engine, now almost entirely reassembled, each component fitted with meticulous precision. Every movement Diana made showcased her expert craftsmanship and profound understanding of her discipline. This was far more than a mere mechanical repair. It was tangible, living evidence of what a woman once dismissed could truly accomplish. Diana paused momentarily, her gaze settling on the thick dossier positioned adjacent to the engine. Within its pages lay every piece of clear, detailed evidence that she, Angela, and Samuel had painstakingly compiled over the preceding days. Each page, photograph, and technical analysis meticulously exposed the cunning acts of sabotage that Richard and his inner circle had perpetrated over many years. A faint sound originating from behind her caused Diana to start. She turned to observe Jasmine standing in the doorway, her youthful countenance etched with palpable worry. Jasmine stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, are you absolutely positive about proceeding with this? I'm feeling quite apprehensive. What if the outcome deviates from your projections? We risk losing everything." Diana regarded her daughter for an extended period, a powerful surge of emotion welling within her. She moved across the room, enveloping Jasmine in a close embrace, sensing each anxious breath her daughter took. After a brief pause, she spoke, her tone gentle yet firm. "Jasmine, I understand your concerns. I, too, have felt apprehension about what lies ahead. But do you recall what your father often used to express?" Jasmine gave a nod, her eyes wide with attention. Diana offered a warm smile, meeting her daughter's gaze. He would always say, "Justice is never achieved by shying away from a challenge or enduring hardship in silence. True justice emerges when we stand our ground, confront the difficulty directly, and champion what is right." Her voice, tinged with conviction, carried a determined edge. "I am fully aware of the formidable obstacles we face, but if I falter today, I will have failed in my duty to protect you and all others who have encountered similar unfairness. Do you grasp this, Jasmine? This struggle is not solely mine. It is a fight to restore fairness for everyone." Jasmine looked up at her mother, a glimmer of understanding in her shining eyes. She grasped Diana's hand tightly and nodded with firm resolve. "I understand, Mom. I'm immensely proud of you. I will always stand with you." Diana exhaled a sigh of relief, a tender smile gracing her lips as she held her daughter close. Jasmine's unwavering support was her most significant source of strength. Turning back to the workbench, Diana completed the final adjustments to the engine, feeling a newfound steadiness. Meanwhile, in a modest dwelling near the city center, Angela and Samuel were meticulously preparing high-quality recording apparatus. Angela meticulously inspected each compact camera, ensuring its power cells were fully charged and all preliminary tests were successfully concluded. Samuel meticulously reviewed every detail of the recording strategy, aiming to guarantee that no action by Richard or his confederates would go unrecorded. Angela met Samuel's gaze, her eyes serious, yet alight with anticipation. "Tomorrow will mark the most crucial day in Diana's professional journey. We have but a single opportunity to unveil the truth to the entirety of the company. Are you prepared, Samuel?" Samuel responded with a decisive nod, his eyes radiant with conviction. "I have anticipated this moment for an extended period, Angela. Enduring these concealed truths day after day has become insufferable. At long last, we have the chance to bring all matters into the open." Angela gently rested her hand on his shoulder, her voice filled with empathy. "I recognize the immense difficulty of this situation for you, Samuel. But please believe me, following tomorrow, all our sacrifices and the period of waiting will have been profoundly worthwhile." Samuel conveyed his gratitude with a warm smile. "I have no doubt Diana will succeed. Her strength surpasses anyone's expectations." That night, sleep eluded all of them. Angela and Samuel repeatedly rehearsed the recording plan, while Diana conducted her final engine inspections and reviewed the evidence compilation for the 100th occasion. Peeking through the workshop window, the nascent, pale hues of dawn began to emerge, casting a soft light upon Diana's weary yet resolute countenance. She stood, her gaze falling upon the completed engine and the stack of documents before her. All preparations were finalized for the pivotal moment. She drew a slow breath, silently vowing that this day would be the one justice was served, the day when she and her courageous allies would dispel the pervasive mist of deception and inequity, restoring unblemished clarity to the truth for all. For Diana understood that regardless of the ferocity of the trials that lay ahead, she possessed the power of truth within her grasp, and that represented an unparalleled instrument of influence that no authority could resist. The initial blush of dawn had barely graced the Detroit skyline, signaling the commencement of the moment Diana had so eagerly awaited. Within the opulent confines of Precision Automotive's main auditorium, the atmosphere was charged with palpable tension. Every employee was in attendance. Their expressions, a blend of curiosity and doubt, were fixed upon the central podium, the stage where Diana's destiny, and perhaps that of the entire corporation, would be determined. Standing with an air of unwavering confidence at the forefront of the stage, Richard Williams exuded an almost overwhelming self-assurance that grated on many observers. His impeccably tailored suit, meticulously styled hair, and the mobile device in his hand, broadcasting live video, were the final elements in his carefully orchestrated campaign to publicly humiliate Diana. Richard surveyed the assembly with practiced ease, a smile playing on his lips as his voice echoed clearly. "Thank you all for gracing us with your presence today. As you are aware, a short while ago, I extended a specific challenge to Miss Diana Harris, a proponent of mechanical expertise. To be quite candid, I am eager to witness whatever extraordinary feat she may accomplish today." A wave of amusement swept through Richard's inner circle. Each subdued chuckle was a subtle jab intended to bruise Diana's ego. He reveled in their attention, a smirk of anticipation suggesting he expected a comedic performance. The auditorium's entrance doors slowly swung open, and an unusual quiet descended. Diana entered, her demeanor calm and resolute, not a hint of apprehension visible on her face. She proceeded with a steady stride towards the podium, her gaze unwavering. Discreetly positioned in strategic locations behind her, Angela and Samuel awaited their cue, their compact cameras poised to capture every significant detail. With a disdainful sneer, Richard observed her composure, though a flicker of impatience and uncertainty betrayed his outwardly confident facade. He advanced towards her, deliberately positioning himself directly beside her, his voice dripping with mockery. "Well, Diana, I must commend your audacity. Pray tell, reveal the ingenuity you employed to rectify an engine that our most skilled engineers could not even comprehend." Diana met his stare without uttering a word, her eyes conveying a fierce intensity that unsettled Richard's smug expression. After a pregnant pause, she calmly opened her document portfolio and produced a substantial dossier. This meticulously compiled report, the culmination of countless late nights, was the work of herself, Angela, and Samuel. In a clear and unwavering voice, Diana commenced, "Before I demonstrate that the engine has been fully restored, I believe it is imperative that everyone present is made aware of the true circumstances that led to the project's initial failure." Richard's brow furrowed, momentarily disoriented, but he swiftly concealed his unease with a dismissive chuckle. "And what truth might that be, Diana? Are you perhaps attributing your own lack of competence to another party?" Unperturbed, Diana continued her address with unyielding clarity and decisiveness. "Upon conducting a comprehensive examination, I discovered that 3 crucial engine components had been subjected to deliberate acts of sabotage. I have meticulously documented every technical detail and am prepared to present this evidence to the company's leadership and our clientele immediately." A murmur spread through the hall as skepticism gave way to shock, with many now directing accusing glances toward Richard and his associates. His self-satisfied expression faltered. He stammered, struggling to regain his composure. "This is preposterous. You cannot possibly substantiate such allegations. This is clearly an attempt to divert attention from your own deficiencies." Angela conveyed a subtle signal to Samuel, indicating it was time to commence recording. Every gesture, every nuanced expression on Richard's face was captured with absolute precision. Diana's voice resonated, cutting through the escalating murmur. "I am not speaking without corroborating evidence. I possess the necessary proof, and now, before I initiate the engine that I have successfully repaired, I invite everyone present to inspect it for themselves." She displayed clear visual representations of the 3 tampered-with components on the large screen. The photographic evidence and technical analyses were so irrefutable that they could not be dismissed. The auditorium erupted in a cacophony of astonishment and indignation, with a significant portion of the audience now casting accusatory stares at Richard and his team. Richard felt the ground beneath him shift. He attempted to interject, but his voice sounded shaky and uncertain. This is evidently a misinterpretation or malicious defamation. Diana, you have no right to accuse anyone without a basis for your claims." Stepping forward, Angela's authoritative voice filled the space. "I am Dr. Angela Morrison, a specialist in industrial sabotage. I have exhaustively verified every technical detail that Miss Harris has presented. This constitutes a clear instance of intentional industrial sabotage, and I am prepared to collaborate with the relevant authorities for a thorough inquiry." Richard's face contorted, his confidence shattered by overwhelming panic and stress. The room teetered on the brink of pandemonium, stunned by the incontrovertible proof Diana had just revealed. Amidst the ensuing chaos, Diana remained steadfast, her eyes alight with unwavering conviction. This intense confrontation was only just commencing, but she had already succeeded in destabilizing the very foundations of Richard's authority, thereby opening the path to the justice that she and her allies had striven so diligently to attain. From that precise juncture forward, every individual within the auditorium grasped that the dynamics of the situation had fundamentally altered. Richard no longer dictated the narrative. Authority was demonstrably transferring to Diana, the individual who had quietly undertaken the preparations to bring the truth into the light. A palpable stillness descended upon the expansive auditorium as every gaze shifted towards Diana, who stood resolute before the restive assembly. She calmly moved to the side of the engine, meticulously examining each part with an air of assured competence, her composure so profound it appeared almost surreal to the onlookers. Richard remained frozen, his countenance ashen, perspiration beading on his brow. The arrogant confidence he had displayed moments earlier had completely dissipated, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. He muttered to himself, attempting to rationalize the impossible. She couldn't have fixed it. It's simply not feasible. However, in stark contrast to Richard's paralysis, Diana acted decisively. With a single, deliberate movement, she depressed the engine's activation button. The entire room held its breath. At the initial, gentle roar of the engine, operating with smooth precision, every component engaged flawlessly, its performance exceeding even the expectations of the original engineers. The auditorium fell into an absolute silence, broken only by the steady hum of the engine, an unequivocal testament to Diana's exceptional prowess. Colleagues and esteemed clients exchanged glances of sheer astonishment and profound admiration, plunging Richard into an even deeper state of shock. He stumbled backward, his eyes wide with incredulity as the nightmare he had never envisioned unfolded before him. At that critical juncture, Dr. Angela Morrison emerged from the crowd, clutching the extensive dossier of reports, images, and concrete evidence. She approached Diana, then addressed the assembly with authoritative lucidity. "I wish for everyone present to comprehend that this is not merely a technical accomplishment. It represents the most conclusive substantiation of a year-long industrial sabotage operation that has been clandestine within Precision Automotive." Angela swiftly projected each piece of evidence onto the large screen. Every photograph, every technical analysis, every video segment was rendered with unmistakable clarity and utter persuasiveness, directly implicating Richard and his inner circle. She continued, her voice measured and serious. Through our diligent investigation, we have established that vital components were systematically sabotaged by individuals possessing intimate familiarity with this engine's intricate design. These acts of sabotage have been systematically directed towards female and black engineers on numerous occasions, all with the explicit intention of undermining their careers and enriching Richard and his associates. The auditorium erupted in stunned outrage at these revelations. All eyes turned accusingly towards Richard, who now appeared utterly defeated, his face pale and drained. The tension escalated further when Samuel Brooks, who had been observing silently from the periphery, stepped forward, holding another confidential dossier. His expression was grave yet resolute. His voice rang out, firm and uncompromising. What Dr. Morrison has presented is entirely accurate. I am in possession of internal documentation that I have safeguarded for many years, records that unequivocally demonstrate that on every occasion a project was sabotaged. Richard and his loyal engineers were the direct beneficiaries, securing promotions, salary increases, and enhanced influence within the company. As Samuel projected the documents, each one bearing Richard's name and that of his co-conspirators, alongside internal memos detailing every instance of sabotage, the crowd buzzed with palpable anger. No one harbored any lingering doubt regarding the shocking veracity of the information. Richard, utterly broken, stumbled backward and sank into a chair, his gaze falling in an expression of profound shame. He managed a feeble protest. This is all slander, and I had absolutely no involvement in any of this. However, by this point, no one believed him. The evidence was overwhelmingly conclusive. His former supporters turned away, their faces etched with disappointment and indignation. At that pivotal moment, Diana stepped forward, her voice resonating with strength and genuine emotion. I am not present here merely to validate my own capabilities. My purpose is to seek justice. I refuse to endorse a system that permits manipulators like Richard to exploit discriminatory practices to harm innocent individuals. Today, I sincerely hope you all perceive the truth and recognize the imperative for change within this organization. Her words reverberated throughout the hall, awakening the conscience and the inherent pride of every listener. Many nodded in agreement, some even erupting into applause, embracing the power of her message. Richard slumped in defeat, his head bowed, stripped of the authority and status he had once taken for granted, undone by his own hubris and avarice. Amidst the cheers and uproar, Diana stood tall, her gaze steady. Angela placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, pride evident in her eyes, and Samuel offered a nod of affirmation. They all understood that this was the decisive moment, the juncture where their sacrifices, their courage, and their diligent efforts were finally validated. This was not solely Diana's triumph. It was a victory for justice, for truth, and for all those who had ever been subjected to marginalization and harm due to prejudice. A sudden hush fell over the auditorium following Diana's resolute pronouncements. Richard, once occupying the apex of authority, now resembled a spectral shadow of his former self, his eyes vacant, muttering feeble justifications that he himself barely believed. It's all a misunderstanding. I would never do such a thing. But his weak rejoinder was completely overwhelmed by the surging tide of collective anger and disappointment from the assembly. Employees, who had long endured Richard's oppressive leadership, now vociferously expressed their scorn and outright repudiation. No one questioned the crystal-clear evidence that Angela and Samuel had so impeccably presented, evidence as sharp as a blade, effectively severing any possibility of defense for Richard or his cohorts. From the rear of the hall, the grand double doors swung open. Thomas Crawford, the distinguished silver-haired chief executive officer, whose presence was rarely noted among the entire staff, entered with a stern and commanding demeanor. Every eye turned towards him as silence once again descended. Crawford's disappointment was unmistakably evident as he strode directly towards Richard. His voice, cold and grave, delivered each word like a piercing arrow aimed at Richard's conscience. "I placed my trust in you, Richard. I entrusted you with the company's most critical responsibilities, and you have profoundly betrayed that trust by sabotaging the very enterprise you were designated to safeguard. What you have perpetrated is not merely a flagrant violation of professional ethics. It constitutes a criminal offense." Richard wavered, attempting to stand tall as he summoned his final reserves of defiance. "Mr. Crawford, this is an orchestrated conspiracy of slander. I am entirely innocent." Crawford decisively interrupted him, his eyes blazing with intensity. "Enough, Richard. The evidence is indisputable, and I will not permit you to continue tarnishing this company's reputation. Effective immediately, you, Jake Silver, and any other individuals implicated are hereby dismissed. Prepare yourselves to confront the legal ramifications of your conduct." Richard collapsed under the immense weight of Crawford's pronouncement. Jake Silver, pale and conspicuously silent, bowed his head in grim acquiescence. All that Richard had once held dear, his aspirations, his power, dissolved like wisps of smoke, replaced by the pervasive shadow of disgrace. Amidst the stunned pandemonium, Crawford turned his attention to Diana, his stern gaze softening into an expression of genuine gratitude. "Ms. Diana Harris, on behalf of Precision Automotive, I extend to you a profound apology and our deepest appreciation. You have not only salvaged a crucial project, but have demonstrated remarkable courage and unwavering determination in bringing the truth to light. Henceforth, no individual within this organization will be subjected to the injustices that you have endured." A resounding wave of applause erupted from both her colleagues and key clientele alike. For the very first time, after enduring so much strain, Diana allowed herself a gentle smile, her heart overflowing with emotion and profound gratitude. Yet, in that very instant, Richard, still unwilling to concede complete defeat, uttered one last spiteful challenge. "I recall my initial proposition. Fix the engine, and I would marry you right here." "Well, Diana, you wouldn't possibly decline such a generous offer, would you?" The room fell into an absolute hush, the attendees stunned by his final, shameless gambit. However, Diana, standing tall and resolute, met Richard's gaze with a calm demeanor and delivered her response with polite firmness, each word resonating with significance. "Richard, I have demonstrated precisely what needed to be proven, but I would never compromise my personal dignity by accepting a proposal that is founded upon insult and disrespect. For myself, respect holds far greater value than any contract or offer you might conceivably present. Perhaps that is the most crucial lesson you are destined to learn today." Her words echoed through the hall, met with a thunderous ovation. Richard, stripped bare of even the last vestiges of honor, bowed his head beneath the immense weight of collective contempt which emanated from every corner of the room. From the rear of the venue, Angela and Samuel stepped forward, their faces radiating pride. They understood that this moment represented the just recompense for all their silent perseverance and inherent courage. They flanked Diana, a living embodiment of the principle that justice is reserved for those who possess the bravery to confront adversity and engage in the struggle. As Richard and Jake Silver were escorted out by security personnel, a palpable sense of relief settled over everyone present. Diana watched their departure without any trace of bitterness, only a serene confidence born from her victory for truth and justice. She understood that this battle was never solely for her own personal vindication. It was for Jasmine, for Marcus, for Angela and Samuel, and for all those who had suffered under the yoke of injustice. In that profoundly impactful moment, Diana grasped that the ultimate triumph lies not in the vanquishing of another, but in the affirmation of one's own inherent worth and dignity. thereby conveying the most potent message regarding fairness, courage, and the true essence of justice. That afternoon, as the soft, golden sunlight bathed the expansive Precision Automotive campus, Diana stood quietly by the window of her new office, her gaze distant as she became lost in contemplation. The room was capacious and bright, a stark contrast to the confined confines of the modest workshop she once knew, yet Diana's fundamental values remained steadfastly unaltered: honesty, courage, and dignity. Following the exposure of Richard's scandalous conduct, Thomas Crawford unhesitatingly appointed Diana Harris as the Director of Technology Innovation. This newly established division was assigned a clear mandate: to foster creativity and advance gender and racial equity throughout Precision Automotive. Diana, once a black female mechanic who had been unjustly dismissed and subjected to ridicule, was now a fervent leader dedicated to enacting meaningful and enduring change. In the ensuing weeks, Diana and Dr. Angela Morrison embarked on a comprehensive initiative to transform the company's culture. Angela, a seasoned expert and an ardent proponent of equality, joined as a senior advisor, collaborating closely with Diana to formulate new recruitment policies that prioritized women and engineers of color. Together, these two courageous women diligently cultivated an environment where every individual was evaluated based on their inherent talent, ethical conduct, and unwavering dedication, irrespective of their background or the color of their skin. Meanwhile, Diana's inspiring narrative transcended the boundaries of Detroit, evolving into a national emblem of resistance against discrimination. Universities and various civic organizations extended invitations for her to address their constituents, sharing her personal journey and rallying others to advocate for fairness and fundamental human dignity. One morning, she received a significant telephone call from Detroit Today, the very radio program where Richard had once so arrogantly denigrated her. This time, Diana appeared as a triumphant victor, her demeanor humble yet profoundly heartfelt. Within the recording studio, her warm, measured voice resonated with inherent strength. The most effective form of retribution is never to bring others to ruin. For me, the most potent response is to construct something positive, to challenge society's misguided prejudices, and to serve as an inspiration to those around us. Her words resonated instantaneously, touching the hearts of millions. From an individual who had once endured humiliation and dismissal, Diana had ascended to become a living symbol of resilience, justice, and the profound power of dignity. Diana's daughter, Jasmine Harris, commenced her own remarkable trajectory. Inspired by her mother's exemplary conduct, Jasmine secured a full scholarship to the University of Michigan to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering. She emerged as a role model for her generation, frequently speaking at educational institutions to encourage young individuals to surmount stereotypes and confidently pursue their aspirations. As for Richard Williams, the man who had once wielded considerable power and manipulated others, he now found himself utterly isolated. In the aftermath of the damaging scandal, he and Jake Silver faced severe criminal charges for acts of industrial sabotage and organized discriminatory practices. Every potential career avenue was definitively closed to him. No corporation was willing to risk employing an individual so thoroughly disgraced. Richard came to the profound realization that his arrogance and illicit ambition had ultimately cornered him, leaving him with no escape from public condemnation and the inevitable legal retribution. Under Diana's capable leadership, Precision Automotive experienced a robust surge of innovation. Women and engineers from diverse ethnic backgrounds progressively attained leadership positions commensurate with their capabilities. Individuals who were previously marginalized discovered genuine esteem and avenues for advancement. Subsequent undertakings not only showcased pioneering technological innovations, but also reflected a commitment to fairness and inclusivity, embodying the very principles that Diana and Angela had steadfastly advocated. On a snowy afternoon late in the year, Diana and Jasmine stood side by side near the expansive office window, observing the silent descent of snowflakes upon the cityscape. Jasmine interlocked her hand with her mother's, her eyes gleaming with palpable pride. "Mom," she began, "I'm certain Dad is looking down and smiling, witnessing all that you've achieved. I am so incredibly proud of you." Diana gently embraced her daughter, her heart overflowing with profound gratitude and a deep sense of tranquility. She recognized that Marcus's spirit persevered within both of them, serving as an enduring reminder of the paramount importance of justice and fortitude. Turning to Angela, her most steadfast collaborator on this endeavor, Diana expressed with utmost sincerity, "We still have a substantial amount of work ahead of us, Angela." She continued, "However, today, I feel genuinely content, knowing that the path forward will be illuminated, not solely for us, but for a multitude of others." Angela responded with a warm smile and a nod, her eyes radiating an unwavering determination. "We will persist in our efforts to effect positive change, Diana. This is merely the commencement." And as Angela articulated, it indeed marked the true beginning. A commencement imbued with optimism and hope, extending beyond precision automotive to encompass the broader community and society at large. Diana's narrative, from her initial dismissal as a female mechanic to her emergence as an exceptional leader, continued to serve as a wellspring of inspiration, definitively establishing that talent, unwavering integrity, and inherent dignity are the true determinants of an individual's character, transcending any limitations imposed by race or gender. Diana Harris's Odyssey stood not only as a powerful testament to overcoming prejudice and injustice, but also as a living illustration of the extraordinary strength derived from dignity and courage. Through her remarkable journey, we discern that irrespective of one's origins, complexion, or gender, it is ultimately character and ethical principles that unveil our intrinsic value. What are your impressions of Diana's decisions and actions? Would you possess the resolve to champion justice as she did? Share your perspectives in the commentary section below. If you found this account to be meaningful and uplifting, kindly bestow a like and share it to disseminate its positive message. Furthermore, remember to subscribe so you do not miss out on further narratives celebrating bravery, equity, and life's most significant lessons. Thank you, and we look forward to sharing the next story with you.